So today I've had a question on our YouTube channel. Someone wants to know how I made this base for the tractor. The very simple answer is it is a curve made from papier-mâché. How did I make that? That is the question. I got myself an old plate, turned it upside down. Here's a nice circular shape. Get myself some plasticine, soften it up, get it nice and flat in the hand like this. Eventually we get that shape. We're going to use this bit here to create the curve like that. Papier-mâché over the top. First of all, we need some glue, some water. Powder. So we also need a layer of calico. Calico or any other fabric like an old t-shirt or an old tea towel or something like that can be used. It's a very good strengthener. What I do is I first soak my calico in water. That way, when you put the glue on it, it helps to absorb the glue. And using PVA is the best way to glue the calico on, because PVA, when it does eventually dry, it takes a bit of time to do, but when it does dry, it dries lovely and hard, which is what you want. You want lots of rigidity on the curve to keep that shape. And then back with the plate, and again we're going to put PVA glue all over it. It doesn't have to be perfect, because in the end the whole thing stretches, the fabric sort of stretches with the glue, and I might even put a little bit more glue on the top as well, just to give it that extra strength and hardness which you need for this particular shape. And pop that one on that way, keeping the broken seam, the torn seam, over any cut seams. That helps to blend one fabric into the other side with some glue on top, like that. Pop that on there. And again, a bit more glue over both those sides. As I said, more glue the better. More glue, more PVA, the harder it will go when it's finally dried. And I've got some little bits here on this edge, but just dip in a spare bit of canvas or calico. Put that there, and a little bit of glue on that as well. And here's another piece over here that needs a bit of calico on it as well. So do the same thing, dipped in water, then glue over the top to make it nice and hard. And I think the rest of it is pretty much covered. So I'm just going to put a final layer of tissue over the top of this and put it out in the sun. If you have sunshine, it's a great thing. If you're doing this in the summer, it'll be a lot quicker than doing it in the middle of winter. Well, it'll probably, to dry solid, will probably take a day, to be honest, which is quite a long time actually. But I can certainly put another couple of layers of tissue over the top to dry the whole lot out as one thing. And I might put a bit of wallpaper paste, which I've got in this jar, on top as well. And as you can see, there's crinkles and it's not perfect by any means. It's not a perfect flat shape, or smooth shape should I say, not flat, smooth. One little useful tip is to make sure you have a little list, even if it's on a piece of masking tape on the side of your paper mache, giving the number of times you have done each layer. So it'll be one layer of paper, one layer of tissue, another layer of paper, then a layer of calico, another layer of paper, and then a layer of tissue. As you do each one, it's good to cross it off as well. If only I could cross it off with this pencil, just so that you know you've done that layer and you're moving on to the next one. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to remember what you've just done, especially when you need to get it out there and dried between layers, which is the best way to do it. You can do it all at once, but it tends to get a bit messy that way. So if possible, let the layers dry in between. So we've done the base out of paper mache. Now the next trick is to create these textured areas of green, possibly grass, open to interpretation, and a bit of a pathway through the middle. So this is dry on top now, and actually the material I use is very simple. It is called sawdust. I go to my local timber merchant, who is always quite happy to supply me with his leftovers from his work. So there you can see there's quite a bit of texture in there, quite different coarseness. You can get different types of sawdust. I find this is the best for the scale that I use for miniature work, and it's plentiful and generally it's free. So what's not to like? The process of putting it on the base is also pretty simple. I get some more of my PVA and again do some swirls, some nice swirls in the corner. Maybe just a tad of water just to break it down a little. It doesn't need to be perfectly laid down. And then actually what I need to do is get a baking tray underneath, because that helps to collect the inevitable overspill of sawdust. So I just go through with my fingers and sprinkle onto the top of the glue. You can see here it's quite patchy in places, and I don't think that matters much. I also get a little bit of a water spray going so that the glue does sort of get absorbed into the sawdust. With another brush, I will just get rid of the sawdust in the middle, because if you remember, the base for the tractor has got the grass on either side, and then through the middle you can probably see that texture in there from the tissues. That's what the path is made of, with stones on top painted together. It all comes up just like the real thing as far as I'm concerned. So that needs to now go out and dry. Once the sawdust is dry, it's time for a nice thick layer of white emulsion or acrylic paint. The paint also helps to stick the sawdust down to the surface. In fact, you can see the sawdust moving in places where it hasn't been stuck to the surface so far. but I think that will just add more texture and interest. The paint also acts as an adhesive and does help to glue the remaining bits of sawdust down. Lift some of the sawdust away if it is a bit too lumpy, like those bits there. Then on the side, maybe take a few bits. No, that looks good. That'll dry into a nice mushy grass mess. So there you go. Okay, so now we have our white dried paint on the sawdust and it's ready to paint it green. I'll just dry it off a bit with a hairdryer. And once the green base coat is dry, I'm just putting in a little bit of variation, a few different colours. Usually I go for a bit darker colours around the edges to lighter at the top. So just picking up that texture that I've created with the sawdust and the glue, and maybe a little bit of yellow as well. Not a lot, just a weeny bit. You can see that it's starting to feel a bit like the original one. So that's the way I created the actual dome shape of the base on which the tractor sits. So now that the paint is dry on the base, it's the final stage. We're going to lift the base up off the plasticine mold underneath. Of course, the first thing to do is actually run your pencil around the edge of the base, and then with a knife or some sort of other not terribly sharp instrument, you need to push around the sides of the papier-mâché and gently lift the papier-mâché base off the plasticine below. And there you have it, a papier-mâché base. Now that you've got the papier-mâché off, it's time to cut around the edge. Easy to do, very satisfying. Ciao for now. Come back soon for more on Murph's Models.